Hey everybody, happy Sunday night. Today is June 29th, 2025. This is Across the Pitch postgame show. I am Mike Barrera. I'm joined by Dave Miller tonight, who is up for us in an early postgame show for you, David. As I share out my links and all that good stuff, how are you doing tonight? And what do you think of this 1-0 loss, which we haven't talked about a loss in quite some time for the Philadelphia Union?
No, I mean, yeah, it's been okay. I mean, weather's incredible here at the moment. I know you Yanks like to mock us for our weather, but I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's like, it was like 27, 28 degrees Celsius today, so it's to push over 30 tomorrow, which is probably near 100 for you guys. Yeah, weather's hot. The Phillies won the series against the Braves, extended their lead at the top of the NL East, which is good. The Union, not not so great, but I mean, you look at that lineup. Um, Again, that no disrespect to the players that played. I think you look at such a makeshift lineup. You've got two midfielders occupying the back four. Great that Andre Blake's back. But I mean, again, you're missing your two top strikers. You're missing two probably top defenders going, or two or three of the top defenders going off performances this year. I mean, you're missing Quinn as well. I mean, you're missing a lot of key players. And you look at that game, you're thinking if they can nick a draw out this game, it'd be an incredible result. I think the most frustrating thing is about this game, I'll obviously go into it in a bit more detail, but was just the way that the only time I think that Columbus really broke the Union down and really got the Union where they want them was the one time they scored. I was
Yep,
just sat there watching the
I
game,
think
and
that's
I
good.
think just before they had that chance on the 83rd, 84th minute, I think Columbus had two shots on target before that point. One of them, I think, was just like a simple save, but then the other one was the goal. I'm thinking they've literally had one big chance and they've scored it, and that's all the Union have restricted them to all game.
Yep.
And I think that's what's so frustrating. I think Jose alluded to it as well. The one time they properly got at Bedoya, the Union was stretched defensively. They took the ball down, literally stroke of half time, down the left hand side, Union's right, ball across, players aren't. Guy comes around the back post unmarked and converts. I mean, that was the one real good chance that Columbus had, and they took it. I mean, can't knock them for being what's the word, clinical, but at the same time, it's a bit frustrating that the Union kept such a good, rich structure throughout that first half. It was so
Hmm.
difficult to break down, and we're limiting space for Columbus to really, try and pick them apart. And the one chance they did have, and they took it, which was frustrating, especially on the brink of our time. And then
Okay.
the bloody, and I know it's been a hot topic over here as well, and probably within Europe was another bloody weather break.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Um,
it wasn't really even officially a weather break in the first half. We had, I think it was an injury or something like that. So the both sides kind of went to their sidelines to have a quick
yeah,
drink. But I think they were talking about the Apple broadcast that it hadn't reached that temperature yet to even have that. But
no,
I mean, there's actually a lot to unpack today. Yes, it's a 1-0 loss. It's not a high scoring game. It wasn't one of those games where you have a lot of goals to talk about. But there's just a lot of things going on both on the field, the substitutions, everything else in between. So let's start off with the starting lineup here. Andre Blake finally back in net. We talked about Andre a bit in last week's show. We'll talk about him today. He had a pretty big save at the end of the match, even though it was called offside. Regardless, you see why Andre Blake is is always the preferred option in net. So we'll talk about him in a few minutes. We had Kai Wagner, Lukic, Makanya, and Bedoya on the right back again. We had Bueno, Jean Jacques, Bender, Vasilev, Anderson, and Damiani. Now, on the bench here today, again, very, very limited selection here in terms of just MLS quality players, I'd say. Raffanello, Kevin Sullivan, David Vasquez, Chris Donovan, and Sal Olivas were the substitutions tonight. You had Eddie Davis, LaFleur, Neil Pierre, and Andrew Rick as the unused subs. So, right off the bat, one of the things we talked about in last week's show, Dave, was uh, how are they going to do things without Jacob Glesnes? So you put Makanya back there. We all wanted to see Pierre. Now I feel like Carnell has earned some leeway into what he does. Right? I think he's
yeah,
all earned our respect. If he wants to go with this lineup, I fully support it. Now, did we all want Neil Pierre to start today? I think a lot of us may have wanted that to happen, but you know what? I think in Carnell we have to trust at this point. Even though
yeah,
you have a loss today, you just have to let him cook because so far he's been right on more things than he's been wrong. And I think that just kind of let him put the lineup that he thinks. And he wanted to try Bedoya again on the right hand side. You put Lukic at center back. I was okay with it. I think Makanya was absolutely fantastic today. I think if you're looking at the Union's man of the match, I think Makanya was probably their best player.
he
Danley
plays
was
again.
yeah, Danley was right up there as well. Um, And then I also did like the fact that Bueno was back today. So I liked that we had Bueno, Danley, and Lukic there next to Mikanya. He's been next to Jacob Glesnes every single match he's played so far. Now he's kind of the lead center back. So how is he going to do? Let's surround him with three really good players, and then obviously Bedoya on his right side. So there's a lot of leadership around Mikanya, which I think may have probably helped this game. But he was absolutely spectacular tonight. You want to talk about Mikanya or that back six that we just talked about right now?
I mean, I think in addition, like, another bit of praise to Makanya, as he sort of alluded to, two players not only playing out of position alongside him, and Lukic to his left and Bedore to his right, but they both got yellow cards in the first half as well. I mean, Bedore in the first minute. So I mean, again, they had to be playing play extra cautiously, and perhaps weren't able to play at a more aggressive level. So for him, he probably had to take more of a command than he was already had to, and be more aggressive, leading the back line, and throwing himself into challenges. Because again, Lukic and Bedoya were walking the tightrope very early. I mean, both been butts in the game. So I think that's another testament to him as well. Like an added bit of pressure that both players on either side of him were taking cards. And in fact, I think, the entire back line took yellow card apart from him. So again, they're all walking a tightrope. So he's having to perhaps be a bit more bullish in the way that he approaches tackles and things as opposed to the others. So I mean, again, I think he played a solid game and looked composed. And again, I think the Union weren't really in much trouble during the second half. I think,
No.
again, it sort of showed the Union controlled a lot of possession, but there's a lot of just, what's the word? It was just a lot of, a lot of possession without doing anything with it. I think Columbus sort of felt
That's fair.
happy just to let the Union have the ball, because I don't think they really had many, or if any, creative outlet or any creative sparks on the pitch to really trouble them. And I think it really did prove at the end when they were throwing bodies forward and just couldn't muster anything really apart from, I think, that one weird goal line scramble.
Mm-hmm. I see Jose Nunez and Todd Lewis have joined us. And Jose says, give him a minute. Todd, I'm going to bring you on first here. I see you there. I'm going to bring in Jose in a second as well. Todd, you just joined us right as we started. So thanks for hopping on tonight for a little bit. Really, the only thing we've talked about so far is, it's a frustrating loss, but you had this makeshift lineup. We talked about Makanya. We both agreed. I think Colin in the comments has agreed as well. Man of the match for the Union side tonight. Andre Blake's back in net. But I think what Dave was just alluding to now, as you signed to the studio, was it felt like even when the Union had possession, they just didn't really have anything at all going forward. It was, even though Columbus wasn't exactly dominating us, it didn't seem like the Union really had much going on attacking them as well. So what were your thoughts on tonight's match? Anything you saw, particularly in the Union's attack, that you thought was a little bit frustrating?
Yeah, I'm glad you guys have brought that up, and I'll go ahead and I'll answer it, Mike, but I'll throw it back to you guys. Why do you guys think they had nothing to go in the middle?
Well, you might be missing a couple players. I mean, just I don't know. I thought Uwa and Baribo were kind of absent tonight.
What about you, Dave?
I mean, again, I think just the creative output. I mean, it showed them actually miss having a player like Quinn Sullivan out there. I mean, I guess they haven't had them for the last couple of games, but I just think in a game like this where you need a player who can be a bit bullish on the ball and take risks, I mean, Vasiljev can do it on occasion, but I mean, he was brought off early. I mean, you took off your two start. I mean, Damiani. I was shocked that he took Damiani off in general. I mean,
that's crazy. Your highest paid player ever, and you take him off in a game where you need a goal. Insane.
Yeah. Not only that, but when you sound horrible. I mean, you got Chris Donovan on the bench and Sal Olivas as your two striking options. I mean, no respect to Olivas, but he lacks the experience, and I don't see the quality, but I guess he lacks the experience at the MLS level to really have, expect him to do anything. Or do you know what I mean? I think this is the first time I've seen him play for the Union. So I mean, again, he's not really played many games, and again, to throw him on in the game where you're lacking experience in those attacking areas as it is already, to then, basically put a lot of pressure on him to try and get a goal on your goal down was certainly a choice. But I think, as Mike said, I think Carnell's got a lot of cash in the bank in regards to perhaps us giving him his trust. But tonight, I think the Union also really lacked Lukic in the middle of the midfield with Darnley. I just think having that drive, they lacked that drive, someone to pick up the ball in the middle of the park and try and take the ball at them. I think when they did get, especially in the second half, when they got the ball in certain positions, you just thought there was a good 5 yards or 10 yards they could have moved into, but sort of stalled off a bit, went sideways, tried to switch pass, trying to do things that way as opposed to perhaps taking a bit of initiative. And I think they did lack that tonight. And again, when you haven't got Lukic in the field or you haven't got a Quinn Sullivan out there to try and take the initiative, you are going to struggle.
Yep, I'm glad one of you guys brought him up, and that's exactly the difference, in my opinion, in this game is not having Jovan Lukic play in the midfield. If you guys have watched the games, as I know you guys have, people in the chat have watched the games, the difference is Jovan Lukic. Everything the Union try to do, it goes through Jovan Lukic in the middle. I was trying to look it up right here. He's got to be in the top 3 for the most touches on this Philadelphia Union team, and I think that's part of the reason why Alejandro Bedoya had said prior to the game against Chicago Fire that, hey, look, Bradley Cornell was thinking about playing Jovan as the right back. Bedoya said, no, I'll step in. I'll play right back. Play your guys in the natural positions. You play Jovan Lukic in a position that's not natural for him, and now you lose that creativity in the midfield with Jovan. Yeah, Indiana Vassila, Ben Bender, those guys aren't creating a ton of chances. What they are good at is pressing. That's what Bradley Cornell values so highly. But when you don't have a Quinn Sullivan on this team because he's away on international duty, yeah, that's huge. You need players to create chances for you. And that player is Jovan Lukic. It can't be all on Kai Wagner, who didn't have a lot of chances creating on the left-hand side of the field, getting crosses into the box, which the Union are top 3 in the MLS with creating chances from out wide. And so, yeah, not having Jovan Lukic to control the middle of the field, that's a huge loss for the Union. And I do think that was the difference in this game. Yeah, I think he filled in nicely as a center back, but he couldn't break the lines with his passes because he's playing so deep. And there was a moment in the first half, you guys, I'm sure remember it, where Jovan presses too early. I think he reads that pressing cue as a center midfielder and not a center back, and then the Union get exposed. The press gets exposed, and then Columbus go down with a chance. Luckily, Makanya was there. You guys mentioned it. Player of the game was able to clear the ball out of bounds and save the Union from any danger. But yeah, missing Jovan Lukic in the middle, that's a huge loss for the Union. Thank goodness they get Jacob Glesnes back for next weekend's game against Nashville. But yeah, I think that's the difference there, guys. Is just not having Jovan Lukic run the middle of the field for the Union. Yeah, I know they struggled to create many chances against Chicago Fire over the weekend. But yeah, I mean, everything went through Jovan. And when you pull him out from that number 6 position where he is your playmaker, yeah, you guys are going to struggle to create many chances.
Well, then let's talk about a few things, Todd. I think, Colin brings up a point right here. Todd, would you have put Danley on the back line over Lukic? Would I answer that first before I kind of go into the next part of this question?
Man, I'm not even sure if I would have put Danley. I mean, if I have to choose Danley or Jovan, then yeah, probably Danley. But I thought that we would have seen Neil Pierre. And the fact that we don't even see Neil Pierre come off of the bench in this game, Salva Livas, yes, you need a goal. I understand why you bring him off. First appearance ever for the Union, and he's playing meaningful minutes. And, you know, we all know that Bradley Cornell trusts the young players. He gives them chances and whatnot. But why haven't we seen Neil Pierre? At the beginning of the season, Bradley Cornell starts talking about how the Union, Neil Pierre specifically, you know, he's still young and everything. He needs to correct some things and everything. And then a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, he starts praising him because he had a big game against Atlas, apparently in the friendly. And this looked like to be the perfect opportunity for Neil Pierre to go against Columbus Crew. And maybe some of that thinking for Bradley Cornell was, okay, well, they don't have a natural number 9, a big body up top that's Columbus. And so Jovan can slot in there well. But again, like I was just saying, it's a huge missing such a creative player in Jovan Lukic as your playmaker at the 6th position. So if I had to choose between Jovan and Danley, yeah, of course I would have taken Danley as a center back over Jovan. But I'm sure this is one that Bradley Cornell's probably not going to think too much over, and they're turning the page on this game quickly.
Well, so here's the thing, Todd. It's like, let's say hypothetically speaking, he starts Pierre tonight, right? And then Pierre just has a clunker, and he just does not look that sharp. He is still a young kid, and it doesn't end up being the result you wanted. He's going to get heat that way. If he plays the game of his life, great. That's fantastic. It looks good. But as I was saying, like right before you signed on, it's like you kind of have to give Cornell some grace here because, for one, he's down 2 right backs. He's down 2 of his forwards. It's coming off kind of short rest with Wednesday into Sunday. So there's so many things going into it. And then you have that hour long the halftime because of the rain delay. There's so many things going right now that's like I don't blame Cornell too much. But yeah, I think a part of me was like, yeah, I mean, listen, Bedoya played a long match against was it Chicago on Wednesday?
Played on 90 minutes.
Yeah, why not put Pierre there at center back? You keep Lukic and Danley together in on the defensive mids, and you put Bueno on the right back, or Raffanello apparently can play right back, so put him out there, right? So I don't want to question Cornell too much. I think he deserves to kind of have one of these games be like, whatever. But
Talk that shit, Mike.
Yeah, I was, but disappointed though in the overall outcome. I think it's fair, and then we just move on to the next match. Jose, though, I see you joined us now. We got a couple beverages in hand. Before I bring up these next set of comments, what are your thoughts on just basically the back six we've been talking about and the first half in general?
I think it certainly felt like a tale of two halves, right? Where the first half it felt a lot of, and I think I don't know if it was Jillian or Kyle who were there who asked questions after Zoom while being at the stadium. The role of that early yellow as well as the I don't know, like maybe I understand the game differently, or I know it's like refereed differently in different parts of the country, different parts of the world in terms of what they let go, what they don't let go. But I've never seen quick of restarts have this much controversy ever in one game where, you know, three times in a row. I the way I understand it, and Dave, you're an ocean away. So like my thought was that like immediately once the foul is blown, you're supposed to have a 10-yard radius, whether you ask for it or not, to be able to pass the ball in whichever direction you want. Apparently that isn't the case anymore where like the player can stand there and it can just continue despite like there was that one where like it bounced off a gas tag, I think, and it continued and he let the play run. I'm thinking to myself, like, what is going on here? Like even Damiani was like, what the fuck are we doing? Like he was just so confused at the top. He's like, what's going on? And nonetheless, like it was a tale of two halves where I think the rain delay really allowed Carnell to maybe reset. He claimed that the substitutions were sort of planned in a way at halftime, if I'm recalling the press conference correctly, or if I heard that correctly, which was kind of interesting to me. I don't know how I don't know how you can maybe plan for that considering the delay. I feel like that would get changed immediately in a way too. But the second half they came in and really took it to Columbus in terms of finally getting some meaningful time outside of their own half. I think I overheard somebody while I was click-clacking away all the way through. I'm going to say it again. I owe the man an apology in a way for how critical I was of him, but I think it was just the reality that he's making so much money not playing. And now that he's playing, he's showing that, and I mentioned it on Twitter, I would be shocked if by the end of the year, if not early next year, he doesn't get a call up to the South African national team, even as a flyer to just be on the bench. He plays. He's been playing really incredible.
Great. Yeah, and we'll talk about the yellow cards and the restarts in a second, because it's something I wanted to bring up for sure. So Steve says, if Neil Pierre isn't ready, then neither is Olivas. Nothing against the kid, but I'd rather have my DP striker in during a 1-0 game, pressing for goal. Todd, that goes back to your point with Damiani being taken out, what was like the 60-something minute? Very, very early on, very type of substitution that we used to see out of Curtin. Sean says it was a schedule loss, dump it and move on, which I think is everybody's mentality. I mean, you've gone 13 unbeaten in a row. You knew you were going to lose one eventually. At least you're going to have a loss like today where it's whatever, you know, you kind of go to the next match. Joe says, I mean, did say to me before this month that we were going to lose to Columbus, Mike. So I guess I'm a fortune teller now, Joe, but I thought this was going to be a loss, whether we had the full squad or not. Then they talks about the refs here. Oh my God, this ref was like the 12th man for Columbus for most of the match. Steve says, how can you do a quick restart if you have to first ask for the 10? Exactly. A great point there. Cole says, if Jovan stands in front of the ball, that is a yellow, though. So, again, people are pretty upset with the inconsistency of the ref. And then I think this is Nate, right, from Twitter. Am I remember the picture correctly? I'm not sure. Akani is going to be sold for a lot of money if he continues to play this way. Yeah, absolutely. So here was my thing. I thought when the ref showed the yellow card within the first, 30 seconds of Bedoya, he was just setting the wrong tone for the match because the Union had 6 yellow cards. Columbus only had 2, I believe, if I'm looking at it correctly. I personally thought Daniel Gazdag should have gotten 2 yellow cards. Dave, what were your thoughts on the way the ref was calling the game tonight? Personally, I thought that one of those restarts on Rossi probably should have gotten a yellow because Kai just kicked it right into him. And then I really think that Columbus got away with the one when Gazdag wasn't awarded the second.
I think there was a lot of, I found weird, there was a lot of like first style cards as well, which typically are the sort of ones you let go. And you see it so many times in football where the players accumulate 2, 3, 4 fouls, and then the referee's like, okay, it's your last one. Where it wasn't as if there were fouls that you have to give a yellow card for in terms of like stopping counter attack. Like the Lukic one, for example, probably I think it was his first foul of the game. Like it's one of those ones where you probably let him off with a warning and say one more time, or next time you do it, it's a booking. I was quite shocked to see he got his card. Same for Bueno. I thought again, first foul commit he committed, and then you sort of saw a lot of similar fouls from Columbus, which weren't given the same. That's right, weren't treated the same. They were given warnings. They were allowed to commit multiple fouls before being carded. Regarding the Kai Wagner thing, he did definitely. I think there were a couple of them where he got lucky, where he decided that instead of resetting the ball with his hands or chucking it out, he decided to roll the ball with his foot to move the ball to position. Which again, if you're an opposition player, you're going to try and take every advantage you can and try and take advantage. I think in the way he got very lucky in that regard. I think there was a couple of them. I think one of the ones where he did just. I think the ball was given to him, and instead of setting it, he essentially bowled it with his foot. So again, if you're a player, you're thinking that's a touch. I'm going to try and take advantage. Which I think any player would. I presume if that was roles were reversed and say a Columbus player did that and the Union player basically ran onto it. Again, we'd probably be complaining the other way, but I think you sort of said there were definitely inconsistencies, especially with how he treated the first foul offences and things like that, which was definitely frustrating. But I mean, again, I think the Union had 3 yellow cards in the first 25 minutes.
3 within the first 35 minutes, and that's hard to, especially when you. So I mean, kind of Jose, I can kind of segue this part into what we talked about on Twitter, where Bedoya has a yellow card very early on in the match, and then it just didn't feel like Columbus was attacking him enough. And you had said to us on the messages, and like I said on Twitter, they finally attack his side, and they end up getting a goal out of it. What were your thoughts on how the Crew were attacking the Union on that side in particular, and just how they were working in the first 45 minutes? I thought the Union did enough to just go into the locker room 0-0, just an unfortunate ending there in stoppage time.
Yeah, I think we can all agree that the sport is obviously very fluid. It's not a chess match the way that American football is, or even basketball off a set plays, etc. Or even honestly just open play. Soccer's unbelievably fluid. You can't really set anything up, but at the same time, I was sort of disappointed on Wilfried Nancy to not target Bedoya's side more the entire half, considering that the guy got a card in the 30 some seconds of play, and really nothing going down that side, or nothing that would force him to make a play. And kudos to Bedoya for maybe restraining himself. I think there were some dumb fouls that he chose not to get involved. I think Todd, you and I talked about it separately on a different chat, but Marcus Anderson coming and crashing into somebody who was just not even facing the Union net and then giving away a free kick directly into the box. So yeah, kind of shocking that they waited so long to maybe switch the ball and the play over to that side. And ultimately, Bedoya is still sort of, despite all the experience and the knowledge of the game, et cetera, still probably piecing together how to play a right back at this level. And it's completely fair. He's probably not expected to know how to do that. He was obviously way out of position in terms of the offside line, where everybody else was maybe a 2-3 yards steeper, and he was a little bit ahead. So allowed the player to kind of run onto the ball, which was a beautiful through ball, to be fair too. Mm-hmm. But then ultimately, I know I mentioned it to Dave and Mike, Kai, falling asleep there on the play. In fact, on the replay, you can kind of see that he finally looks over his shoulder and he's like, shit. And then starts sprinting, right? He realized, oh no, Farsi has got me. So that doesn't happen. That goal doesn't happen. But then again, that's the game of soccer, right? Bradley Cornell said as much last, I think it was the pre-match conference, where it's soccer's a game, especially at that level. It's a game of picking apart and taking advantage of the other person's mistakes. And that's exactly what happened here, between Bedoya being maybe a little bit out of position on the back line, but then ultimately Kai falling asleep there at the back post. So kudos to them. Just stinks that it was at halftime. God, imagine going into that long break without that goal, just how much better prepared maybe they would have been to go into the second half with, all to play, rather than chasing 1 point, never mind 3.
I think it's been my biggest. Sorry, I'd like to cut you off there, but that's been my biggest criticism of Kai this year. The amount of goals or big chances the Indian concede, and you look back at the highlight and you're like, "Hang on, who's the guy missing there?" Because there's a 3-on-3, and so you know what I mean. And again, it's either Kai's not tracking his man, Kai's not busting the gut to get back and try and help in the counter attack. And you look at the game, and he's slowly jogging whilst everyone else is sprinting to try and make up make up, make up this, well, make up, make the ground. And he's sort of half jogging, half like not even putting in a full run to try and get back. And you're sort of thinking, how's this goal come about from the opposition right hand side? And that's right, your left back's 40 yards up the pitch when he should be tracking back. And that, for me, that's been a regular occurrence this year. We switched off at the back post, or he hasn't been tracking his marker. I think that's been my biggest criticism this year for Kai, is he just hasn't been perhaps up to scratch defensively as he has been in previous seasons. I just don't know whether that's perhaps more in his role there. They've just told him just to stay up and then we'll deal with it defensively or whatever. But I just think he's focus-wise, he's not been as up to par this year as we have seen from previous seasons.
Well, there's some questions coming in about Quinn Sullivan here. Max says without Quinn, the team lacks that creative spark and pace up front. And people asking about the players who have not been in the lineup for a while, Baribo. But before we get to that, before we talk about the offensive side of this team, Todd, I have a question for you. I feel like the set pieces tonight were kind of lacking. Your thoughts on Kai Wagner's set pieces and his corner kicks? I thought they just were not that great tonight. And if anything, the Union were probably going to attack and get a goal off a set piece rather than an open play.
No, I think they were actually pretty good.
Really? Okay, so we're going to disagree on that one.
You had the big chance there by Jesus Bueno. You had a chance with Wagner crossing it to the back post for Makanya. He wins a header, gets it to Bedoya. Bedoya wins it at the near post, slots it across the 6-yard box. I mean, that's one that has to be in the back of the net. So now I think the delivery was actually pretty good by Wagner. Also had a play too, and you could tell this was a set piece routine where they did it last week or on Wednesday against Chicago, where they played it short, top of the 18-yard box to Jovan Lukic. Try to do it to Jovan Lukic again. This time it gets caught out by Columbus, and then Columbus goes and tries to hit on the counterattack. So, no, I do think the Union were pretty creative on the set pieces tonight. They're just going to execute off of them. I mean, that's a huge chance there by Jesus Bueno towards the end of the game, literally the last kick of the game. And then the one where Kanye wins a header, Bedoya is at the near post and then puts it right across the 6-yard box. I mean, you had 4 people, I think, for the Union right there in the 6-yard box. How that doesn't go in, it makes no sense to me. Yeah. I said this on a show I was on yesterday, I believe it was, for Columbus Crew. I said, set pieces are going to make the difference in this game. And they almost did. They really almost did in this game. We saw it previously between Philadelphia Union and Columbus. Columbus scores a late set piece goal with Sean Zwatsky. And now the Union almost do it with Jesus Bueno. So, yeah, I think set pieces were fine. I mean, a little bit unfortunate that they couldn't get at least one goal off of the set piece. But, I really don't think the Union played bad. I really don't. And like Jose said, you look, it's just one moment of lack of concentration. Yes, we saw it with Chicago. Everybody's going to attack Alejandro Bedoya's side because they know he doesn't have the legs. And so what they did this game was they put Alawatu Makanya over on that side to try to, cover for Bedoya if he gets beat and everything. And both players got beat. Yes, it was more so Alejandro Bedoya that should have been on lap and line in. But then Kai Wagner falls asleep completely there on the back post, doesn't track Farsi. And to Dave's point, that's been a struggle of Wagner's, I feel like, the last couple of years, honestly. And that might have been part of the reason why he's not playing in Europe, because of, his lack of concentration. He's great at creating chances for the Union, leads the team with 46 chances created prior to this match. But, yeah, defensively, he does have those lack of moments where, he just seems to click off every now and then. And, tonight he paid for that mistake. But, Columbus really didn't come in here and create a ton of chances, which is a credit to the way that the Union controlled this game defensively and in the midfield. Defensively, offensively, they didn't really have too much tonight. But, it probably does feel like it could have been a draw. A draw kind of seems like it would have been well-deserved for the Union, just how well they played defensively on the night.
Yeah, and also there's one of the comments here, and I'll bring up some of the comments so we can talk about that before we segue, Jose, into this next couple of questions regarding the missing players in the press conference. But we're thinking right here, we're trying to think where this comment went. I think I lost it here. Sorry about that, guys. But essentially, once the game's over, you have Olivas, Vasquez, Raffanella right back. You have all these players in this lineup that are typically not playing extended minutes. Kevin Sullivan played a whole half. It was the longest time he's ever had in a Philadelphia Union uniform. And they still looked really competitive. And that makes you feel really optimistic for what this team can do later on in the season. When you need to use that depth, this depth can compete. But it just feels like the depth's a bit inexperienced. And you talk about defensively, too. One of the stats they put up on the Apple telecast was that the Union are 6-2-1 on the road. And they've only given up 7 goals on the road, which is pretty damn good considering what we've seen over the last couple of years. They haven't always been the best team on the road. I think they were pretty solid last year, but then they were really bad at home. But, I mean, overall, this is this is a team that can travel really well and make these teams look uncomfortable in their home stadiums, which is fantastic. But Jose, a question for you regarding some of these missing players, Brebo, Ua, anything that Carnell touched upon in the press conference that you can share about these players that are not on international duty?
I think Ua has some time to go just yet, based on Cornell's comments. But then again, based on I think something I heard. So when I for just inside baseball, when I watch these games, I keep the feed in Spanish on my TV, and then I put the English one on my tablet where I cut video, and I try to switch it back and forth. So I'm listening in Spanish here, and then watching in Spanish or in English over there. So I try to catch everything that the commentators are saying. I feel like either the English feed said something how Baribo could have technically played today, but Cornell wanted to give him one additional week, and I think Cornell even mentioned that. Said again.
Jake Zevin for the English feed said that.
Yeah, so Cornell wanted to give him one more week. I think it sounds like Baribo could have featured today, but considering coming off of injury and frankly, like the emotional toll of being in a war zone and trying to get there, it's probably good that he gets some additional time off. I don't want to get into the politics behind that, but like he probably could have played. So that's where those two guys are. And if you weren't watching or following along, the U.S. Narrowly beat Costa Rica, so they move on to the next stage of the Gold Cup. So, if anything, the Union are fortunate that Haiti and Jamaica shipped the bed the way that they did, and they have those players back, because otherwise this could have been an even longer stretch of potentially missing some of those players or reintegrating a Danley for another week. Imagine that had Danley not played today.
Yeah, no kidding. Speaking of the U.S. national team, Mike says, I want a Quinn kit because he talked about what I'm wearing over here. This is a Quinn Sullivan U.S. men's national team kit. So I had it custom made because they didn't even have it available on the U.S. men's national team website.
I thought you were going to say you had it custom made because of your height.
No, I'm an adult medium. I'm a normal size person. No, no, but I was watching the match as well, Jose. That was a close call. But Matt Freese had a pretty big save in the PKs. It was shot right to him, but still. Nonetheless, yes. Our boy Matt Freese did fine, but it doesn't seem like we're going to have Quinn Sullivan or Nathan Harrell back for at least another week or so, at a minimum. I don't know when their next match should be, right? And
I think what is the cadence of this thing, Todd? Is it midweek this week, and then they play again this coming Sunday?
They play on Saturday.
Fuck, really?
Yeah.
Holy smokes! This thing's taking forever for a small tournament.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about the Union. Yeah, for the Gold Cup. Yeah, they play on Wednesday, and then they play over the weekend. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just like, oh my god, 2 weeks yet? That's crazy.
6 p.m. against Guatemala on Wednesday.
Yeah,
but hey, it's the summer soccer.
Yeah. Leagues Cup starts in like 2 weeks' time, which is crazy. 3 weeks' time, I think, actually.
What I will say is that if these weather issues persist next year, it's going to be a nightmare, and I will probably join a petition to never host a World Cup in America again. Because how the hell, as a foreign watcher, can you then have like a 4-hour delay in between games? It's going to be crazy. It's money. Complaint.
Don't worry about it, Dave. You don't have to worry about it. It's never coming home to you. So
right.
You're good.
Hey, listen, as an enjoyer of football in general, I do not want to wait 4 hours in between games. I mean, I know my friend who was a Chelsea fan was livid yesterday for like 3.5 hours, and he literally messaged. He said, "I know exactly what's going to happen. We're going to concede a dodgy penalty in stoppage time," and it happened exactly like that. And I was like, "I play."
My wife joked with me where like when she was watching the broadcast during the halftime delay, she said to me, I know it's going to be a long delay when they start playing a separate, completely unrelated soccer game in the middle of a delay side by side with the rain falling. I'm like,
crazy. I was like,
he's like, you're bang on, right?
That's right.
But
it's a very baseball thing to do. Every time there was a Phillies rain delay, you'll see like, here's a replay from 1999 when they played like whoever. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, just needed the 2-minute Tom McCarthy context introduction voiceover to it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, obviously, I know that the Club World Cup, like, it's not, and the tickets aren't selling as well as perhaps they would have liked to have them sold. But can you not imagine like these 60,000, 70,000 arenas next year? Like, I know we've gone completely off topic, guys. Sorry, okay. But can you not imagine like these 70,000 arenas and stadiums next year, like because of like rain delays and weather delays, having to try and cram 70,000 people into the concourses and during these long delays and these fans and stuff. It's going to be an absolute nightmare. Like, logistically.
Yeah, absolutely. But listen, we can talk about the World Cup for a lot of time because the Club World Cups also had a lot to talk about as well. And the fans in Philadelphia, they knocked off Reggie White's bobblehead. I think it was at when near the Pepsi Center or something like that. Jose, I don't know. Maybe you probably know better, right? But back to the Union game. We had this long weather delay. I actually thought it was going to be in favor of the Union. Todd, did you agree that this delay would be in favor of Columbus or the Union? Because I mean, an hour to just sit around and do nothing is a lot of time.
Well, I mean, knowing how much the Union love analytics, and I think Bradley Cornell had talked about this, basically saying that they showed him a lot of film at halftime, then he let the players go off and do their own thing. Yeah, I kind of thought it would favor the Union just because these guys are just so analytical. They always have their tablets out, always showing them every little detail and everything. So, yeah, I mean, I guess it is no surprise that the Union came out, looked like the better team to start the second half, and I would even argue the majority of the second half, the Union were the better team. I mean, you saw them creating a little bit more chances. Granted, nothing on target, but we talked about those set pieces. I mean, that's 2 opportunities in the second half. They should have scored one of those goals on a set piece. Unfortunately, they weren't able to. So, yeah, I mean, I thought just because of how strongly the Union believe in analytics, not saying that Columbus doesn't, but yeah, just knowing how in-depth the Union are for every little small detail, I kind of thought halftime would favor the Union.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're thinking about Preston in this hot weather, an extra hour to kind of just cool off, hydrate isn't exactly the worst thing in the world. Then we started to see the subs coming on. One of the biggest topic one that they've kind of talked about on the Apple was Kevin Sullivan getting the most time he's ever seen so far in MLS. Dave, your thoughts on Kevin Sullivan? I thought he had a couple touches that were a little bit too hard. I know there's one time towards the end of the match when the keeper was out of his net, he tried to just volley it in and just skied it. Kevin Sullivan, long performance. I wasn't too thrilled with it, but it's a tough spot for a young kid. What are your thoughts there for Kevin?
No, I think I absolutely agree. It's definitely a tough spot to go into as well when you're already men down and you're going into a situation where essentially you're being brought on with the weight on your shoulders that you're expected to be one of the guys that gets back in the game. Like, no, as crazy as that sounds, that is probably the reason why I brought him on. He thought he might give us a spark, he might provide us a spark. And perhaps Columbus wouldn't be expecting us to use him tonight. So you try and create a spark for us to try and get us back in the game. Again, as you sort of said, positive, I guess, is he played 45 minutes at an adult level. He's played at, at an MLS level, which is good for probably as a learning curve for him. But I guess it sounds harsh. It probably shows that perhaps he's not there at that level yet. He's still got a lot. Again, he's a teenager, a kid still, isn't he? Like, really, he's still in high school. He's still a kid. Like, again, it was definitely a difficult situation to put him into. Which, I don't think he had the impact on the game. Perhaps Bradley Carnell would have perhaps envisaged him having when you brought him on. Probably a long halftime moment, sitting there thinking, how can we perhaps throw them off at the start of the second half, bring on Cavan and see if he can. Again, it just didn't work for him. But I think, as we alluded to earlier on in the show, I think sort of Columbus were probably, it sort of showed for most of the second half, Columbus were happy just to sit in and, just let the Union have possession because they sort of knew they didn't really have that creative outlook and spark that was necessary to, break them down and, create a big chance or create a couple of big goal scoring chances. I think as Todd alluded to, the 2 big chances the Union did have in the second half was the guard line scramble, which was the clearance off the line and following up, and the Bueno header were both from set pieces in open play. The Union did nothing really, apart from, as you sort of alluded to, the Cavan, miss-hit volley. But again, that came from a set piece because the goalkeeper came out of his line to punch clear. Again, the Union in that second half, again, it was a lot of possession, but just nothing to really show for it. And I think Columbus's game plan was probably the case of, we're going to come out and, just set off and allow the Union just to try and break us down. And again, the Union didn't have the quality on the pitch or necessary quality to do so.
Todd signed off just now during our conversation for people who are not watching but listening. So he had to run real quick, but thank you, Todd, for joining us. As always, we appreciate your thoughts. Dave, I think you're spot on there, but let's keep talking about these subs because one point that Michael brings up here is why Sal over Eddie. I'm so confused about that. I said the thing is that we've only seen these guys in Union 2, and I only give that so much weight because it is such a lesser quality than MLS. But I would have liked to seen Eddie. I think he's earned it, considering he's played final in the last game, and he obviously had a good showing in the Atlas match as well. But I was curious to see what Sal could do. I didn't realize he was that tall either. For some reason, I thought he was a little bit shorter than that. But Vasquez and Oliva saw some extended time. Jose, any thoughts on the youngsters in their MLS debuts today?
Yeah, it's a tough situation to be tossed into, right? Coming off of a rain delay and a hostile environment in Columbus, and a match where you're trailing, trying to get something, trying to keep alive a 13 match unbeaten streak, a streak. I'm sorry, and Carnell said as much, right? Like this was a very tough environment. So kudos to them. And if anything, I had posted on Twitter, so I apologize. I keep on referring to what I posted, but in the 80th minute, there was a sequence that within 4 passes, they went from their own defensive half to almost, having a solid opportunity to score. That was all Union 2 players or former Union 2 players, where it went Bueno to Sullivan to Vasquez to Sullivan and almost to Salalivas. And, like you sort of take a step back and then look at this final lineup that was on the field. You have Olwethu, you have Bueno, you have Raffanello, you have Vasquez, you have Olivas, you have Sullivan. Like it just keeps piling on. It was honestly a Union 2 show off match in a way, with having all of these bodies that have at some point competed in MLS Next Pro, and again just sort of continuing to solidify just the importance of development for Philadelphia, and rather than going out and buying talent, which they go on to do at a different rate than other teams and at different scales than other teams, they are certainly more than happy to try to create it. Though the constant comment that I see online is that of Neil Pierre, and I think I can agree too. I would have loved to have seen him today. Was this maybe too high of a test per se for the situational understanding of it all? Maybe, but you just don't know what you have until you actually throw him out there.
Counter to that, though, Jose, if it's too high of a test for Pierre, then why is Olivas and why are Kevin Sullivan getting so much time? Because again. I think there's arguments to be had on both sides, but to the point I said earlier today, Carnell has earned our respect and some leeway and some grace, especially when he has a situation he currently has with his roster, the missing pieces, the injuries, which now we have 3 injured players that were starters with I guess no, 2. Well, I guess Frankie Westfield's also out too. So yeah, we've got 3 or 4 injuries right now. It's a pretty banged up squad.
That ankle's gonna be tough. Ankle's gonna be tough to come back. I can't imagine that comes back very soon. I would think probably Montreal. Sprained ankles are tough. They're, no matter if it's a 1, 2, 3, the different levels, those are very tough to come off of.
100%. I mean, you feel again, I've suffered a sprained ankle playing football. Literally, you stick your foot out to block a clearance, and your ankle jars the wrong way. You can't move for another 3 days after that's happened. That's even after fully recovering. It takes a while to fully recover. It's not fun, as you said. It's one of those things where you want to properly get him through his paces in training and to make sure he is going to be fully fit.
Absolutely.
How long is Montreal from now? I'm just looking at the matches here.
2.5 weeks.
Yeah,
2.5 weeks.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be tough, considering that I think, and this is where it's going to get really interesting next weekend, what Carnell does in terms of a lineup, considering that I would think that all eggs are on the basket of the U.S. Open Cup, not so much this Nashville match.
So here's an interesting comment that comes up. I'm probably butchering the first name. Kian Gonzalez says, comparing Kevin and Eddie Sal playing compared to Pierre playing is not apples to apples. He's a center back. That's a lot more pressure. So I'm going to focus on the pressure part of this. Who has more pressure in this situation like this?
Nice.
Kevin Sullivan Phenom on a primetime game that needs to score a goal for the Union to continue their unbeaten streak, or Pierre standing in front of Andre Blake with Makani on his side and Bedoya on his right, and Danley and Lukic in that mix too? I mean, I don't know if you're talking about pressure, who would feel more pressure in that situation? Because I'd argue that Kevin in moment has a lot more pressure, considering the name that he has and the pedigree that he has, and everybody hyping him up to be this phenom when he's still just a kid.
Yeah, I can see it the other way, where Cavan in the position that he's in can get away with making a mistake, whereas Neil Pierre makes a mistake and then it's a 2-0 game, right? And then it's all but done and dusted. So it's there. I don't think that there's a right answer, honestly. And I had really hoped. I never expected for him to start. I just had hope that at some point he would come in and have something to say during this match, especially if you think about being down a goal last 5-10 minutes. You have Kai maybe having some crosses, some opportunities like that. The kid is nearly 7 feet tall.
He's huge.
He's gigantic. Like, okay, I'm maybe exaggerating. He's like 6'5", 6'6". He has to be. So like, throw him out there and let that beanstalk do something, right? When it comes to heading the ball down. I said, for goodness sakes, Bueno nearly won a ball. I think he did actually end up winning a header there across the box. So like, I don't know.
6'5".
There you go, 6'5". So like, no, I Neil's time will come, and maybe it's the U.S. Open Cup game. I don't know. It's just unfortunate that I think he would have certainly played earlier this season if it wasn't for that ankle injury that he sustained against Chattanooga. I think it was. I think that the U.S. Open Cup match was like the following, like 2-3 days later, and of course, wasn't available then. So. Yeah, it's difficult for him and tough, and I actually have the game behind me. His brother Nelson, who was transferred earlier this week, actually 24 hours ago or so, immediately sent to Vancouver's bench for the game against Los Angeles LAFC. So and what's interesting is the Union chose in their press release to list it as an undisclosed fee with a sell-on. But Vancouver went full send. He's like $50,000, $50,000 game. You know, like fuck your undisclosed fee. I'm just gonna tell everybody what it was. And there was a lot of questions about like, why did we sell him for so cheap? Well, it was actually a purchase trigger. And frankly, who would have guessed that this guy who has been tossed about Europe and USL was ever gonna score 11 or 12 goals in 10 matches in MLS Next Pro? So like. He's on the bench here. I'm watching to see if he gets in maybe in the later stages of the game. They're already winning 1-0.
That'd be fantastic. Well, let's talk about the scoring or the lack of scoring, because we're really feeling Uaz and Baribo's absence, I think, each week that passes. Definitely Damiani has a lot of pressure on him to score. Talk about pressure, right? Cavan Sullivan, Pierre. I think Damiani has a lot of pressure on him to score as well. I think it was the game against Charlotte. I can't remember right now. He was just itching to score a goal, and it just seems like nothing can finally break through outside of a penalty kick, right? Just off a header or a volley, whatever it might be. But at the same time, to give Damiani some credit here, it's tough when you're playing alongside Donovan or Marcus Anderson, these players that are just not the same caliber of Ua and Baribo. So, Dave, I'm going to go to you for this one. Thoughts on Damiani tonight? Thoughts on how he's playing these last couple matches? I mean, we're really leaning on him to score a goal right now with Ua and Baribo being gone for at least one more match.
Yeah, I think tonight was definitely a case of just more lack of service and anything. I don't think he had the service perhaps he had in that Dallas game where he had like plenty of chances. It was just again the Union lacked really having any real creative output tonight. And again, I think they had one shot on target in the entire game, which was from the head off the line. So I mean, again, it's not like the Union were in other games where they've created like 15 chances and do you know what I mean? Like 6 shots, none on target. Like they struggled to really test Columbus tonight. Again, I think a lack of service is probably the main one. That's the thing. It's difficult as a striker, isn't it? You sit there and you're annoyed about the fee. But I think these are the sort of games where you keep Damiani on until the end. Because again, that Jesus Bueno chance, you probably would back Damiani to be in that position to score it if he's on the field, as opposed to leaving it up to like a 5-for-8 Jesus Bueno to try and take the initiative in that sort of situation. Yeah, it's one of those nights that's going to be frustrating for him. But I think, again, as you alluded to as well, it's tough as a striker, especially perhaps in Damiani's case, where, again, he's still applying his trade, he's still learning, still growing as a footballer. And, again, you're now the main focal point for the opposition, whereas perhaps if you're playing against a Baribo or Uar, the opposition is going to perhaps be more focused on them. So you then get a lot more room, and you get a lot more...
So Hoagie's comment, Jose's family worships the letter N because behind you, Jose, you just have a bunch of N's on your screen. Go ahead, Dave. That was a good one,
Sorry.
Hoagie. My bad. Continue.
Yeah, I think again, like as opposed to as an opposition looking at the lineup, you've got Marcus Anderson and you got Marcus Anderson alongside him. As the opposition, your main focus now is okay. Damiani's the guy we're going to be covering. We're going to put all our focus into marking. I think that's perhaps another little wrinkle that perhaps he hasn't been used to as well. Outside the last couple of games, where when he has started, he's had one of the Union's 2 quality strikers alongside him, who are obviously going to occupy more attention.
Absolutely. Jose, your decorations have caught the attention of the comments. This is cracking me up here. But listen, Jose, I know you're a big Damian supporter. I know you've been trying to give him as much, time to develop and grow into this game. Your thoughts on Dave's comments, and then any just perspective on how he played tonight in Columbus?
I think Dave's spot on, and I don't know if you guys said it, but like today was tough because you move Lukic from the middle to the center back or in the defense. You're like sort of shooting yourself in the foot while trying to keep another one in the race, right? By trying to secure the defense. So like, pick a poison on what you want to do. Do you want to try to score more than what you're keeping out, or you're trying to keep out more than what you're scoring? Because I think that's basically like the bargain that you're going up against here. So the other thing I would say is that, to Dave's point on service, so glad that Andre Blake's back, team legend, incredible accolades. But for a game like this, where you have this disjointed nature of a midfield that's not fully complete, that's not like maybe advancing the ball the way that they typically would, to not have Andrew Rick in the back pinging the ball out and taking it all the way to the attacking third of a one pass with as much as the ball was passed around the back. And I'm not just saying kicking it as hard as he can aimlessly, but rather getting the ball to drop to somebody with purpose, not having that when you have Andre and, he tries his best, but I remain on this. I do legitimately and genuinely believe that Andrew Rick has a top 10% of the league when it comes to distribution as a goalkeeper. To not have that in the back is tough. And, I still question why Andre started today outside of maybe the wages demand, how much he's making compared to the rest of the team, because he did not do well in the Gold Cup for Jamaica. Horrible tournament for Jamaica as a whole. And certainly he had some questionable moments. And Andrew just had also a clean sheet, as well as a decent couple of matches. It's tough to sort of see the decision. That's one that I would question. Like, it's definitely not a magnitude type of thing. Andrew has played in important games also for the Union so far. Just kind of an interesting decision.
And yet at the same time, it's like when Andre was called upon today, you could see why he's as good as he is. I mean, he had the goal wasn't going to get stopped by Andrew Rick or an actual brick wall. That the defense let out the keeper to dry on that one.
Sure,
but you have the save on the offside call for Columbus, and it's like, I don't know if Andrew Rick comes out and makes that save there. It was a stapled, what's it called, a typical Andre Blake save in that moment. Even they said that on the broadcast as well. Like, when they need the Union need him to step up, he steps up with something like that. And I don't disagree with you, Jose. That was going to be our last topic for tonight, was to talk about Andre Blake. I really like Rick, and I love Andre Blake, and it's so hard to make the decision. I don't envy Carnell whatsoever in making that decision, because it is so tough, and you don't want to, bring down Rick's confidence or make him feel like he's being benched, even though it's obviously not a benching. It's more so just bringing back your starter. But it's a tough conversation to have with Andrew Rick, but I thought Blake did fine tonight. Dave, any thoughts on Andre Blake's performance today?
I mean, he did. I guess he did fine when called upon, but I think as you sort of alluded to, definitely the distribution, you can sort of see the night and day, in the distribution game, that's for sure. I think that's the main thing. Again, it was one of those games I think I alluded to at the start of the game. Like, the only real chance that Columbus had for 85 minutes was the goal. That was the only real clear-cut opportunity they had, and they took it. Like, that was probably the most frustrating thing, was that for pretty much the entirety of the first half, the Union had a rigid structure of, sitting in, frustrating Columbus, and that worked until they were caught lacking once and stretched. And the one time they did properly go down the left-hand side and tried to launch an attack down the left-hand side, it worked, and they scored. That was probably the most frustrating thing. And They're one of those goals where, again, the goalkeeper can't do much about keeping it out. And if he keeps it out, it's one of the saves of the season.
Absolutely. But listen, I think you've gone 13 straight games in all competitions unbeaten. You lose a game in Columbus 1-0 when you have so many of your pieces missing, coming off short rest. You now have a week to go before the next match, which is on July 5th in Nashville. A game I'm very much looking forward to, considering Nashville came to Chester and pulled off, I think it was a 3-1 win. I would say arguably that was probably the worst game we've had so far this season. Was the Nashville game. They were
that was the
horrendous.
windy game with the Sullivan missed PK, as well as a PK given to Nashville because Glesnes headed somebody in the box or something like that.
Yeah.
It was really bizarre. Hey, the last thing I'll say super quick about the Blake thing, and I have no insider information, no insight. I'm not sharing any news or anything. It's, to me, interesting that Nelson Pierre moved. The Union 2 signed that young guy from Navy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the Navy guy, Piers Holbrook, and Mike Sheridan. And it's quite obvious that Andrew made himself either number 1 or number 2. And then you also have Blake. Do the Union really have a need for a third goalkeeper?
Oliver Semle, your time has reached to an end. Yeah, he's like the guy you just forget about. Be like, oh yeah, he's actually taken up a pretty significant spot on our roster.
And that very significant spot because he takes up an international spot as well. He does not have a green card. So if the Union wanted to sign anybody that's international without a green card, they would need to either buy an international spot, which come cheaper in the summer window. But the reality is, if you can avoid using the GAM and you move Semla either on loan somewhere and you end up eating some of his salary, or just flat out buy him out, or you find somebody that actually wants him, though I would say that he's more damaged goods than anything. Just something to think about, honestly, just genuinely thinking about what could happen with someone like him, considering Piers Holbrook has joined the Union 2 and had a really bad mistake with the Union 2 earlier this week, but then made up for it in the penalties with the save that ended up winning the game for them, or getting the points in their extended PK shootout that they do when they draw.
So I'll bring up this comment here, and then we'll do like the last round of question here. With a rookie center back, I'm gonna say cornerback. I'm thinking Eagles already. SECB, I think Eagles.
Hey, I was going to say I've got one last discussion before the end of the show. We'll wrap this up.
We'll answer these comments first. With a rookie center back and an unproven center back in Lukic, I think Blake was a better option. If you have Glesnes with Makanya, Rick might have been the guy. And you know what, Sean? That's a great point as well. Sometimes you got to have the veteran leadership with a little mix-up on the center backs. I'm fine with it overall. Again, guys, Carnell's done fantastic this season. Let's not get on him too much for this decision today when you have all those bad issues. Valerie says, am I hallucinating, or did I actually hear Bradley say something about for sure adding someone soon? Domesticated Hoagie says, I'm getting married for a green card. There you go. Oliver can just go and get married for one. And Michael says, Pierre Lukic Luzier better not be officiating the Nashville game again. I don't remember. I don't think. When did they announce the refs for the next match? Is it this early already?
I think it's like midweek.
Midweek, yeah.
Okay. So I just realized that the summer window's opening up July what, Jose?
24th.
It's towards the end, isn't it?
Yeah, it starts middle to the end. I think it's the 24th. I could be wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I'm pretty sure it's towards the end. I just don't remember the date. So now that we've seen more than half of the season go by, we see the injuries that are currently in front of us. We see the depth and some of the issues we have with this inexperience. Personally, for me, if you asked me a month ago, I would have said midfield is probably your most important position to upgrade with an addition in the summer window. Do you guys now lean more towards a forward to bring on in the summer window, considering Damiani is not really producing? Ua has this injury that keeps lingering, and Ty was coming back, but obviously, you can't just have two strikers up there, especially with one that's not scoring goals. So, Dave, I guess I'll go to you first for this.
Still think you need another creative outlet in the field, whether it's a winger or a player of like a Quinn Sullivan style player who has the pace to take players on and, take initiative and gets on the ball. I think that's still a need that the Union, even if it's a role player, someone that plays and starts the game, starts not when you're short-handed, where you know that his pace can cause the opposition problems, and that is your outlet from an attacking perspective, as opposed to trying to play the same way you do play without the correct pieces in the actual positions. Again, like, you're trying to play that high press in the way that, playing passes through the lines, whilst arguably your most important midfielder was playing centre half.
Mhm.
There's no, and you haven't got a Quinn Sullivan out there as well who can be that creative spark if Lukic isn't there. And do you know what I mean? I think you need another player who can offer you something different, whether against a winger or the Quinn Sullivan type player, something like that. I think is what probably for me is more important. That's just another depth piece that you can call upon, even if, I think that's for me. That's what I would say is your biggest need, is another creative outlet.
Sure, especially when you lose Daniel Gazdag. I think Indy Vasiljev was supposed to be that plug-and-play person to replace Daniel in the top, but it just hasn't had that same finishing approach in the final third, which I think you mentioned earlier, Dave, and we've talked about earlier in the show as well over the last couple of weeks. Jose, thoughts on who we should be adding in the summer window?
Well, I think as soon as the summer window opens or right before it, Mikel Ua is actually allowed to pre-negotiate a contract with any team without the club's consent, considering that his contract with MLS ends on January the 1st, 2026. So he's on the last stretch here of his season, and if you may remember correctly, his performances last year triggered the option on his contract. So by all means, maybe the union didn't really want him. I don't know, but like he got his contract extended from his performances or the metrics that he hit. So he's a free agent, or actually genuinely a free agent after the season, January 1. But when it comes to some of these roles that maybe could use some shoring up, I'm intrigued onto what Ernst Tanner and company decide, right? Do they feel like they have enough to try to stay the course, or do they try to add and shore up, or do they try to move on because the best value is there, right? If someone comes knocking and says, we will give you $15 million for Ty Baribo, you'd be stupid not to take it, to be completely honest with you. $15-20 million, you'd be foolish not to sell Ty Baribo for that type of value.
And Jose, you're absolutely correct. And we had the same conversation last year when we had the sale of Jose Martinez. We've talked about the great investment that was Julian Carranza. I don't disagree with you in the slightest bit from a business standpoint.
Yep.
However, this is what kills Union fans, is that when you have a team that feels complete. And last year, if you guys remember correctly, once Julian gets sold, Ty Brio comes on, starts playing really, really well. We get Danley Jean-Jacques. Jose is still here. And we think, wow, we have a really deep squad right now. We're playing okay. We're starting to turn the season around. Then Jose Martinez gets sold, and it's just like, okay, there goes our depth. So that's what will kill me personally, is this team has so much promise, and we are still in first place, and we have gone unbeaten 13, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It would suck to take apart this team this year when there's really not like a great MLS club in this league right now. I don't think any team on either side of the conference is exactly blowing people away phenomenal. I think when we went to the MLS Cup, LAFC was obviously extremely strong that year. We were extremely strong. Like, we were clearly the two best teams in the entire league. I don't have that feeling this year. Like, even though Columbus is a strong team, they're not that good at home this year. They've only won, I think, 6 out of their 11 games or 7. It's not. They have been fantastic at home. I'm not really terrified of Miami. Cincinnati, we really haven't seen much of them. Have we played them yet so far this year? Cincinnati, we played them home, right?
The Union played them in between their CONCACAF Champions Cup matches.
What was the result? I'm drawing a blank on this one.
Union won.
Yes. Okay. I'm not too afraid of Cincinnati. Like, every team in our conference, I feel like we can handle our own pretty good. I think Nashville's the one who had really beat us the most, or most convincing, I should say, when we played really poorly. So that's why I'm even more intrigued for this match on the 5th to see how we do against them the second time around. So this just feels like the season that if we're ever going to go for it, it's this year. So why dismantle the team this year? That's a thing with me, Jose. That's all.
Yeah, and the other thing I'll say is, and this is, again, complete speculation, but just sort of thinking out loud the way my brain works, Danley's old team, Metz, from Ligue 1 in France, just got promoted back to the first division of France. If you're that team and you're thinking, how do we rebuild this team to be a first division French league team.
Yeah.
Why don't we bring back the guy that we sold that's thriving in MLS for probably cheaper than we could go and find somebody in France or some of the other leagues in Europe, right? So, and especially somebody that has played in the league and has done well and knows the facilities, et cetera. It would just make too much sense to not consider that as Met. So I don't know what they think about Dan Lee, what they think about Bariba if the right number comes through. I don't know what they think about Quinn Sullivan, who obviously when he played in the Gold Cup this tournament so far has done fairly well. But I also wonder what they do with Jan Glavinovic, right? Who injured. He's on a loan with a purchase option. I don't know how well his knee's healing. I would have thought that maybe by now we'd have a better response to the question of his injury beyond I think what Cornell has shared of he's escalating a little bit here and there. It's like, well, you maybe have said that like 3-4 weeks ago. Like what does that really mean now? I think
he's been gone for a while.
Yeah, he's just running north-south. What about the east-west, or where about the ball movement as well, right? That's where it gets really challenging. So maybe a center back makes sense too, to bring someone in. But then you also question, what about Neil Pierre, right? What happens to his development if they bring another center back to compete with him and Olwethu and Glesnes, et cetera? So they can add just about everywhere, and it would make sense, especially now with Nelson Pierre leaving one roster spot open, hypothetically.
Yeah, Valerie mentions here we thought Jan would be back in June, and he's still MIA on his return date. And you also think, listen, center back, Nathan Harriel is still someone who's being worked into that center back rotation. So if Frankie Westfield's coming back fine in a couple of weeks after his ankle injury, Nathan Harriel comes back from Gold Cup if they get booted early. Yeah, it's like I don't know if center back's a need right now. If you're only going to bring in one player, I think you go more at the top and try to get some more competition behind Damiani, because even if we can agree that Donovan isn't the fourth starter anymore and we want to see more of Marcus Anderson or Sal Levis, etc., whoever these guys are, we still know that an upgrade would be preferred over an MLS Next player in that spot. So I don't know. There's a lot to discuss. We have about a month to go. Like I said, our approximate date for that is around July 24th. Again, don't quote us on that. You can look it up online, but it's only a few weeks away. So I'm sure Tanner's really starting to figure this team out. Like, where do we really need the most help?
It is July 24th through August 21.
Okay, perfect. So any final thoughts here, Dave, before we wrap this show up?
Well, I'll go on. There's not a thought, man. Interesting debate that Elliot Shaw Parks. Don't know if either of you guys saw the tweet.
No.
I think it was from yesterday. He dropped an interesting debate, which was one said, if I could only keep 5 players from each of the main 4 team, like Philadelphia sports teams, I'd keep. One, he named the Union as one of the top 4. And these were the 5 players he named: Kevin Sullivan, Quinn Sullivan, Rick, Lukic, and Harriel.
Okay. Can I just say something? I know these WIP guys and all these big wig media guys need to get hot takes out for their clicks and their views. And I know ESP, Elliot Shore Parks, is like an expert clickbaity guy. But whatever he's been smoking this summer has been some crazy shit, because his takes have been absolutely awful. And he's a guy, Valerie says, who said that? Elliot Shore Parks. He's some guy who covers the Eagles. His football takes are usually okay. But I think I saw him at one of the kit releases like last year, the year before that. He comes to the games once in a blue moon, occasionally posts on stuff. There is absolutely no way in a reasonable person's mind that you can think that list makes sense. But when he opens his mouth, it makes me want to just punch him a little bit. As Jillian says, he's a professional troll. But Dave, can you say that list one more time for me? It was Quinn, Kevin, Lukic, Rick, and who else?
Nate Harriel.
God, I'm not. Jose, any thoughts on that?
I'm not taking the bait. If anything, I try to call him out on his bait. And I think I replied to one of his things. Let me know if WIP needs a soccer guy, because
I saw that.
Clearly, you're not it, brother. And kudos to him for even talking about the sport. To be completely honest with you, so whatever. But I'm not buying into that. It is what it is. Let him do his thing. He can
Steve,
talk.
Steve says here, should the owner sell the team? 610-632. Yeah, Elliot Shore Parks is an interesting guy. I mean, I would certainly not agree with that list whatsoever. But yeah, no, probably my cornerback comment probably sparked that thought in your brain, Dave, with the Eagles there. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Jose, your final thoughts there?
No, not much on my end outside of last night. I was on assignment for MLS. I wrote a small piece about Cincinnati, who are playing extremely well. No surprise, keeping pace with the Union, even more so now with tonight's slip up per se, though you could argue that this match was a little bit more difficult than Cincinnati going to Orlando.
Yeah.
And honestly, I really do think that Evander, who they just got from Portland in the offseason, or I guess just traded for him, having an MVP season, very much like what Lucho did in 2023. So Pat Noonan getting to coach another potential MVP is a very special thing. And he's very quick to say, I asked him, you had a little Argentine who became MVP under your watch, and now you have a Brazilian, like, what do you think? It's like, dry ass Pat Noonan. I had nothing to do with either. It's like, all right, thanks. Appreciate it. MLS Soccer appreciates your comment. Thank you so much.
Gosh.
Beyond that, just some more MLS coverage coming up. I found out I'm going to be doing some coverage for MLS as well during Leagues Cup. Some more coming on that front, writing throughout that tournament. Fortunately, this is not the crazy ass edition that we've had the last couple of years with the amount of games. This is a more streamlined version, and just trying to come up with some more fun content as this team continues to roll on. But I think the biggest thing that I would maybe pimp out is, I think at some point this week I'll put together a very big gallery of all the pictures that Carl Golbish, who was the photographer
photos
I brought with me to the Club World Cup, just putting together a very big gallery for people to watch, and got to watermark them. Actually, believe it or not, Fabrizio Romano stole one of his for one of his posts today and gave zero credit whatsoever. And whether people realize it or not, one credit by Fabrizio Romano could make or break someone's career very quickly, considering the amount of eyes that he gets. So
did
all
you
that to
call
say,
him out on it?
yeah, Carl, congratulations. Your photo caught the eye of the most annoying but yet popular soccer people in the world. Unfortunately, you just weren't credited at all. So nonetheless, yeah, expect that gallery at some point this week.
Ornstein's better.
I saw some of the pics though, Jose. Absolutely excellent photographs. Really, really top notch.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I asked Carl, I need you to get some more soccer babes, and he took the assignment and ran with it. the amount of pictures of the crowd that he took were incredible, and of course I'm not going to include all of them, but it was special, man. That the Club World Cup, and I know it's coming to an end in Philadelphia this coming Friday, when Chelsea and Palmeiras face each other. It's the final match in Philadelphia. It's been special, and I'm trying to write up a piece, and I may need to talk to you guys a little bit more, and certainly other people. I think this tournament really showed Americans the difference between being a fan and being a customer of a sport or a team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's opening a lot of eyes to people, and I think some are realizing that maybe they've been more customers than fans.
Yeah, I think people they're passionate about their sports in America for sure, right? Especially Eagles fans, right? We come from a very passionate fan base here, Jose, but they don't understand the religious level that these fans support their clubs. I mean, Dave, you guys live it. Mark said, it's a lifestyle. It is something that they are just not used to. So when they get upset because there's the flares in the stands, like, oh, they're damaging our stadium. No, they're not. That's what they do every single week. That's a typical Tuesday for them out there in England and everywhere across the globe. So I can't wait. This was such a teaser for next year, which is gonna be even a bigger stage, and gonna be, the fans are probably just gonna be pouring across the streets everywhere. I don't care what game I go to. It could be like two of the worst teams in the entire World Cup. I just gotta go to a game. I don't care who.
One of
just
the
live in that.
one of the most amazing comments that I saw, and it was one of our colleagues in terms of Philadelphia independent media / media period. Obviously, they don't speak English, they don't read English, they don't read Portuguese, whatever. And what's really funny is that this one individual was posting videos and pictures of the fans doing what they're doing, and the comment, which I'm guessing he can't understand what it actually says, but the comment said something, these Americans just don't realize that this is something we do every 3 to 8 days on a
Yep.
weekly basis year round. And that's where I want to be thoughtful about how I write this, but I really do believe that the customer versus fan comparison is going to be it's going to be apt. And I know it's going to piss off people, but I think if they hang in there and finish reading the entire piece, which I'm like halfway through, they'll understand what I mean. And it's not to be harmful or demeaning, but I really do think that people are not are not really realizing just how different it is to be a customer than it is to be a fan like these guys.
Well, Sean mentions here watching grown men crying because their team won is amazing to see the true passion. And I think Dave, you might have mentioned that when Crystal Palace won the FA Cup. You're like, you see these people who've gone decades and decades without winning anything, just pouring emotion out in that moment. I mean, Jose, we say that. Well, Dave too, you're an Eagles fan. We say that with being an Eagles fan our whole lives. Like, oh my God, we're so passionate. But like, for them, it's just 10 steps even higher. And I can't wait. I really, Jose, for that piece and for this to come out. And it's been fun. Even though I didn't go to a Club World Cup game, all the coverage and everything like that has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, let's wrap up the show. This was a 1-0 loss to the Columbus Crew. Our next match is on Saturday, the 5th of July at 8:30 p.m. I will be going live again after that show or after that game. Will you guys be on with me next Saturday?
I think I'm out next Saturday.
Okay, you're out. Jose, if you decide to join, if you're not on MLS or anything like that, come on down. We'll have our little post-game show. Besides that, this is AAT Sports Network. Jose R. Nunez 91, Dave G. FC Miller, Embraer 1323 on Twitter. Have a great Sunday night, guys. A great week ahead. Go Union.
See ya.